Russia's President Vladimir Putin says he set up a police unit to support the embattled Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. Putin said he was responding to a request from Lukashenko, although he said the force would only be used if the situation, quote, got out of control. In the Belarusian capital, Minsk, police again arrested dozens of anti-government protesters. A number of journalists were also held, including a DW reporter who was later released. Well, for the very latest now, let's cross over to Minsk, where our correspondent Nick Connolly is covering developments there. Nick, tell us more about the demonstrators who've been arrested. On what grounds are they being held, and how are they being treated?
Good morning, Terry. Well, this is ever difficult to say at this point because telephones are routinely taken away from people, brought in, detained by police on the square for protesting here in Minsk. This is interesting insofar as there hadn't been many arrests for the past week or two. Protesters had largely been allowed to go out, although they were filmed by security services. But yesterday evening then, a group of what's believed to be about 70 to 80 people were detained on Independence Square. And interestingly, the authorities doing their best to prevent reporters from reporting on this, threatening reporters with detention if they were to film this. And this is indeed what happened, including to my colleague Alexander Lukashenko, who spent about 6 hours in detention. She was asked to provide access to her phone, to provide passwords. She refused to do that. And when she refused to do that, she was only released after they had confiscated her phone. So a real attempt here to crack down on protests and also on coverage of those protests.
Nick, it's been almost 3 weeks now since the election in Belarus, and little has changed. Do you get the impression that the protest movement is losing momentum?
I'm not sure that's the case. I think the big question is here, where does this all go? There is no roadmap for this kind of protest here in Belarus. This is a country that essentially was without politics for a quarter of a century. Opposition politics was a very niche, marginal activity, and now suddenly you have 200,000 to 300,000 people coming out onto the streets of Minsk in a country of only 10 million people. So politics suddenly all over the place, and people grasping for new forms of organization, new kind of, there's an opposition council, and people trying to work out who will lead this or if they even need a leader. So I think that is the big question now, where this goes. But there doesn't seem to be any great fear on the part of protesters, any great willingness to stay at home and to stop coming out. It's just totally unclear for now how this would go on, given that the government is refusing any kind of dialogue.
Okay, that's the protesters, but what about Lukashenko? How much support does he still have, President Lukashenko? Does he still have the full backing of the military, for example?
Well, it seems for now that the top brass is on his side, but there have been ever more resignations from people, the boots on the ground, as it were, policemen, army, soldiers, and people throughout the structures who have left, some of them left the country for fear of reprisals after their decision to leave the government service. I think the sheer numbers make it very difficult for the government to crack down fully. 200,000 to 300,000 people, that is unprecedented, and Lukashenko's regime simply doesn't have enough people to put all these people behind bars. So I think there is a certain safety in numbers for now, but where this is going, no one can say for now.
The confrontation continues. Nick, thank you so much. DW's Nick Connolly there in Minsk.